The royal vessel shook violently as another blast hit its shields. Kira stood on the command deck watching her homeworld grow smaller through the viewport space around her ship filled with enemy vessels. Her people, the Lyrians, faced extinction. Kira belonged to a race with skin that shimmered like opals and eyes that reflected starlight. The princess had escaped her dying planet as the Draconians, a warlike species from a neighboring system, launched their final assault. Her royal guards insisted she flee while they staged a last defense. The princess felt her heart sink. She was the last of the royal bloodline. If captured, the Draconians would parade her as a trophy before executing her publicly. Their hatred for her people spanned centuries, over disputes about territory and resources. The ship computer beeped with warning signals. Another Draconian cruiser approached from the rear. Kira ordered evasive maneuvers but knew her small vessel could not outrun the larger warships forever. She needed to find a place to hide to plan to survive. Through the chaos of battle, Kira spotted a wormhole opening near the edge of her star system. The natural phenomenon appeared rarely and unpredictably. The princess made a split decision. She directed her ship toward the swirling vortex despite the protests of her navigation officer. The ship entered the wormhole with a violent lurch. Alarms blared throughout the vessel as it was stretched and compressed through the fabric of space. The few crew members that remained with Kira held on desperately to their stations. The princess herself gripped the command chair, her knuckles turning pale against her shimmering skin. When they emerged on the other side, the ship systems were critically damaged. Oxygen levels dropped rapidly and the engines sputtered weakly. The navigation officer checked their position and looked up with wide eyes. They had traveled farther than any Lyrian had gone before, into an unexplored sector of the galaxy ahead. Of them floated a blue and green planet. Third from a yellow star, scans revealed an atmosphere suitable for Lyrian biology and signs of civilization. The computer identified the world as Earth, populated by humans, a bipedal species similar in appearance to Lyrians but without their luminescent qualities. Kira ordered her remaining crew to use the emergency pods while she attempted a controlled landing on this unknown world. The royal vessel was not designed for planetary entry, but there was no choice as the life support systems continued to fail. She programmed the ship to head toward a less populated area, hoping to avoid detection by the native species. The descent was rough and terrifying. Flames engulfed the ship as it tore through. The atmosphere metal plates ripped away from the hull, exposing interior sections to the searing heat. Kira braced herself as the ground approached at alarming speed. The emergency landing systems deployed too late, barely slowing the vessel before impact. The crash site smoked and sizzled in a wooded area outside a settlement. The ship had carved a deep gouge in the earth, leaving a trail of debris and broken trees. Kira struggled to free herself from the twisted metal of her command chair. The emergency systems had failed, leaving her trapped in darkness. On Earth, Susan Patel sat in her university dorm room studying late for her astronomy final. The 22-year-old student had always been fascinated by space, though she never expected to encounter it firsthand. Her roommate Kelly was fast asleep as Susan struggled with calculations about stellar distances. A brilliant flash of light illuminated the night sky outside her window, followed by a rumbling sound that shook the building. Susan rushed to look. Something massive had crashed in the wooded area behind campus. The tree line glowed with an eerie blue light, unlike anything she had seen before. Without thinking, Susan grabbed her jacket and rushed out to investigate. Other students had gathered outside, pointing at the sky and filming with their phones. But while they stayed near the dorms, Susan felt drawn toward the woods. Her curiosity always stronger than her caution. The night air felt electric as Susan made her way through the trees. The strange glow grew brighter, guiding her forward. She stumbled over fallen branches and pushed through undergrowth until she reached a small clearing. There before her lay something impossible. A craft clearly not made by human hands. Susan approached carefully. The metal structure was unlike anything she had ever seen. Smooth and iridescent, it reflected the moonlight in strange patterns. Steam hissed from ruptured pipes, and strange symbols glowed along its hull. She heard a sound from within, a soft moan of pain. Hesitating only briefly, Susan searched for an entrance. The craft had broken open in several places, exposing the interior. She found what looked like a hatch, and examined it for a way to open it. As if, sensing her presence, the door slid open with a mechanical groan. Susan peered inside and gasped. The interior was filled with technology. Beyond her understanding, lights blinked on control panels, and holographic displays flickered weakly. But what truly shocked her was the figure trapped beneath a fallen beam. A woman, but clearly not human. The being had humanoid features, but her skin glowed with an inner light that shifted colors like an opal. Her hair floated around her head as if underwater, despite the normal gravity, and her eyes, when they opened, reflected the stars themselves. Susan froze, unable to process what she was seeing. Kira looked up at the human female standing in the doorway of her ruined ship. The translator implant in her ear automatically began analyzing the local language, preparing to convert her speech. She saw fear in the human eyes, but also curiosity, and something else, compassion perhaps. Susan stepped forward despite her fear. The alien woman was clearly injured, pinned beneath debris that had fallen during the crash. Using all her strength, Susan pushed against the metal beam. It moved just enough for the glowing woman to slide free. Kira winced in pain. Her arm was bleeding a strange silvery liquid that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. She touched her translator implant, which had been damaged in the crash, and attempted to speak. The words came out as musical tones, incomprehensible to human ears. Seeing the confusion on the human face, Kira tried again, focusing her thoughts on the damaged device. This time broken English emerged. My ship crashed. Need help. Danger follows me. The words were simple but conveyed the urgency of her situation. Susan hesitated only briefly before responding. My name is Susan, I can help you, but we need to hurry. People will come to investigate the crash. She gestured toward the woods, indicating the direction they should go, supporting the injured. Alien Susan helped her from the wreckage. The princess leaned heavily on the human student as they made their way through the dark forest. Behind them, they could already hear voices and see flashlights as others from the campus approached the crash. Susan knew she could not take the alien to her dorm. There would be too many questions, too much risk of discovery. She remembered an abandoned groundskeeper shed near the old botanical gardens on the edge of campus. It was rarely visited and had basic amenities like running water. The journey was slow and difficult. Kira struggled to walk, her injuries more severe than they initially appeared. Several times they had to hide as campus security vehicles passed by on nearby roads. By the time they reached the shed, both women were exhausted. The small building was dusty but intact. Susan helped Kira onto an old cot, then searched the space for anything useful. She found some old towels and a first aid kit left behind by the maintenance staff. Using what she had, Susan cleaned the silvery blood from the alien wounds. Kira watched the human tend to her injuries with gentle hands. The princess had been raised to believe that undeveloped species like humans were primitive and dangerous. Yet here was this young female helping her without question. The translator implant worked better now, allowing for clearer communication. My people are called Lyrians, Kira explained. We come from a planet in what you would call the Andromeda Galaxy. Our world was attacked by enemies called Draconians. They have hunted us nearly to extinction. Susan listened with growing fascination and horror. The story reminded her of historical atrocities on Earth, the persecution of entire peoples for resources or power. Why are they attacking you, she asked as she finished bandaging the alien arm. Resources, Kira replied. Territory. Our worlds orbit the same star. We developed faster technology. They wanted it. They started killing. When we defended, they declared war. She paused, her star-filled eyes dimming with sorrow. I am the last of the royal bloodline. If they find me, they will use me to force any surviving Lyrians to surrender. Susan felt overwhelmed by the implications. An alien refugee, a genocidal war, and now Earth was somehow involved. She took a deep breath, trying to process everything. Before she could respond, both women froze at the sound of vehicles approaching. The shed headlights swept across the small window. Campus security, Susan whispered. We need to stay quiet. She quickly turned off the battery lantern she had found, plunging them into darkness. They listened as footsteps circled the shed, then moved away. The security team was searching the area, but not thoroughly. When the danger passed, Susan realized she needed supplies, food, water, and medical items for her new companion. She told Kira to rest while she returned to her dorm to gather what they needed. The princess watched her go, wondering if she could truly trust this human stranger in her room. Susan packed a backpack with bottled water, energy bars, and painkillers. Her roommate Kelly stirred in her sleep. "What are you doing? It's like 3 in the morning." She mumbled, "Just getting some study snacks for an all-nighter." Susan lied, "Have a biology exam tomorrow." She slipped out before Kelly could ask more questions. When Susan returned to the shed, she found Kira examining a small device she had salvaged from the ship. The princess explained it was a communicator capable of reaching any Lyrian vessels that might have survived. The problem was power. It needed more energy than available on this primitive world. Susan mentioned her friend Maya, who studied electrical engineering. If anyone could help power the device, it would be her. But bringing another person into their secret was risky. Kira considered the options and agreed they needed help. The next morning, Susan found Maya in the engineering building, working on a prototype solar cell. Her friend looked up as Susan approached. "Hey, what's up? You look like you haven't slept. I need your help with something," Susan said. "But you have to promise to keep it secret. No matter what." Maya nodded, curious. Susan had never been one for dramatics, so when she led her friend toward the abandoned shed, Maya knew something serious was happening. Maya's reaction to seeing Kira was predictable shock followed by scientific curiosity. The engineering student quickly moved past her initial fear and began examining the alien communicator. Her eyes lit up at the advanced technology. "This is amazing," she whispered. "How does it work?" Kira explained the basics of quantum entanglement communication, while Maya listened with growing excitement. The human engineer believed she could adapt her experimental solar cells to power the device at least temporarily enough to send a distress signal. While Maya returned to her lab to gather equipment, Susan and Kira talked. The princess learned about Earth culture, while Susan learned about the Lyrian civilization. Their different worlds suddenly seemed less distant as they found common ground. Both species valued art, music, and knowledge. That night, Susan brought food for all three of them. They ate together in the shed, while Maya worked on connecting her solar cells to the alien device. Outside, the night was clear and stars shone brightly. Susan pointed to them, asking Kira if she could identify her home. Kira smiled sadly, explaining that her star was too distant to see with the naked eye as they worked on the communicator. Kira told them more about the draconian threat. They would not stop with destroying the Lyrians. Their species expanded aggressively, conquering and consuming resources. They might one day find Earth too if their expansion continued unchecked. The communicator finally powered up after 3 days of Maya working on it. The device emitted a soft humming sound as its display glowed with symbols unfamiliar to the humans. Kira operated the controls, her fingers dancing over the holographic interface. "We need to be careful," she explained. "The signal could be detected by draconians. They have technology that can track quantum communications. I must keep the transmission brief and encoded." Susan and Maya watched as Kira sent her message. The princess spoke in her native language, a series of musical tones and clicks that sounded beautiful to human ears. The communicator translated and encoded her words before sending them across vast distances of space. "Now we wait," Kira said, turning off the device to conserve power. "If any Lyrian ship survived, they will receive this message. But so might the enemy. We should prepare for either possibility." Susan realized they needed a better hiding place. The university shed was too exposed, especially if alien ships might soon arrive. She suggested moving to her family cabin in the mountains. It was isolated and rarely used during the academic year. Her parents only visited in summer. The three women gathered their supplies, and Maya borrowed her boyfriend's car to transport them to the cabin. The journey took several hours, winding through mountain roads until they reached the secluded property. Surrounded by dense forest, with a view of the night sky, it was perfect. The cabin was rustic, but Comfortable with solar panels that Maya could use for her equipment, they settled in Kira, taking time to heal from her injuries. While they waited for a response to her message, the princess told them more about her people. Lyrians evolved on a world with 3 moons, she explained. Our biology adapted to changing gravitational forces. We developed abilities to manipulate light and energy, a gift that made our civilization advance quickly. She demonstrated by creating a small ball of light between her palms. The humans watched in amazement. Days passed without a response from space. Susan continued to check news reports for any mention of the crash site. University officials had declared it a meteorite impact, and the story faded from headlines. But she worried about government agencies that might be investigating more thoroughly. One night, as they sat on the cabin porch looking at the stars, Maya spotted something unusual. A light moving erratically, unlike a plane or satellite. Kira stood up abruptly, her eyes fixed on the object. "That is not human technology," she said, her voice tense. The light grew brighter, approaching their location. Susan felt fear grip her heart. Was it a Lyrian rescue or draconian hunters? The 3 women retreated, inside the cabin, unsure what to do. Kira activated her communicator, sending a brief pulse signal. The response was immediate and alarming. "Draconian scouts," the translator interpreted. Kira looked at her human friends with dread. The enemy had found. Earth found her. They must have followed the wormhole trail. Her escape had led them straight to this innocent world. Maya suggested they hide deeper in the mountains. But Kira shook her head. "If I leave, they will search, destroying everything in their path. I must face them." She looked resolved, ready to sacrifice herself. Susan refused to accept this. They had not come so far to give up. She asked about the draconian weaknesses, limitations, anything that might help them fight back. Kira explained that the scouts would be few in number, sent to confirm her presence before a larger force arrived. They had time, but not much. Maya suddenly had an idea, returning to her equipment. The engineer had been studying the quantum communicator. She believed she could modify it to emit a pulse that would disrupt draconian navigation systems. It wouldn't stop them, but it might confuse them long enough for Kira to escape. While Maya worked on the device, Susan and Kira watched the sky. The light had disappeared behind the mountain, but they could feel the presence of something alien and hostile growing closer. Kira prepared herself for confrontation, removing a small crystal from her clothing. "This weapon is all I have," she admitted. "It can discharge energy, but only has power for one use." The night deepened around them. Stars shone brilliantly in the clear mountain air. Then they heard a low humming sound approaching from the forest. Trees swayed without wind as something massive displaced the air around it. A shape appeared at the edge of the clearing. A vessel unlike any human craft, its surface black and reptilian in texture. The draconian scout ship landed, crushing vegetation beneath it. A hatch opened, and 3 figures emerged. They were tall and muscular, with scaled skin and elongated heads. Their eyes glowed red in the darkness, and they carried weapons that pulsed with energy. Kira stepped forward from the cabin door, despite Susan trying to hold her back. The princess stood tall, her opalescent skin glowing brightly in defiance. "I am here," she called out in the draconian language which her translator conveyed. "You have found me. Now leave this world in peace." The lead draconian let out a sound between a hiss and a laugh. "Princess, Kira, last of the royal bloodline. Our emperor will be pleased," he gestured with his weapon. "Leave these primitives and come with us. Your execution will be public, but quick, resist, and we destroy everything." Susan watched from the window, her heart pounding. Maya worked frantically behind her, the modified communicator almost ready. "Just a few more minutes," she whispered. "We need to stall them," taking a deep breath. Susan stepped outside, joining Kira. The humans stood beside the alien princess, unafraid, despite the deadly weapons pointed at them. The draconian seemed surprised by this show of solidarity. Kira spoke again, her voice strong. "This world is under Lyrian protection now. You have no authority here." The lead draconian laughed again. "We have the authority of superior firepower." "Princess, your protection means nothing." Inside the cabin, Maya completed her modifications. She activated the device, which emitted a high-pitched whine. The effect was immediate. The Draconians staggered, clutching their heads. Their ship lights flickered and alarms blared from within. Now Kira shouted, raising her crystal weapon. A beam of pure energy shot forth, striking the scout ship. The vessel shuddered as systems overloaded. The three Draconians retreated back toward, their craft clearly disoriented by the quantum disruption. Susan grabbed Kira, pulling her back toward the cabin. They barely made it inside before the Draconian ship lifted off erratically, its navigation systems compromised. The vessel rose unsteadily, then shot away into the night sky, leaving a trail of smoke. "We bought some time, but not much," Kira said as they watched the Draconian ship disappear. "The scouts will report back, their main fleet will come." She looked at her human friends with sadness. "I have endangered your world," Maya examined her modified communicator. The device had overheated during use but remained functional. "We can send another message," she suggested. "Perhaps there are Lyrian survivors who can help us." Susan agreed. They had to try something. The three women gathered around the device as Kira prepared another transmission. This time she included information about Earth, its location, and the humans who had helped her. The message went out encoded and brief. To their surprise, a response came almost immediately. A series of coordinates appeared on the communicator display. Kira gasped, her eyes wide with hope. A Lyrian outpost, she explained, a small colony of survivors hidden in a nearby star system. They escaped before our world fell. The message contained more than coordinates. It informed Kira that several royal ships had escaped the destruction of their homeworld. They had established a hidden base and were gathering allies from other species who opposed Draconian expansion. They requested that Kira join them as soon as possible. "How can we get you there?" Susan asked. The princess ship was destroyed and Earth had no vessels capable of interstellar travel. Kira explained that the Draconian scout ship that had just fled was damaged but operational. If they could capture it, they might have transportation. The plan was dangerous, but they had no choice. The Draconians would return with reinforcements, possibly within days. Maya used her technical knowledge to track the damaged scout ship. It had landed in a remote area, about 50 miles away, likely for repairs. Susan borrowed Maya's boyfriend truck again, and the three set out to find the alien vessel. They drove through the night following the signal from Maya's tracking device. The scout ship had landed in a canyon, hidden from satellite observation and casual passers-by. They left the truck at the canyon edge and proceeded on foot. The pre-dawn light made it difficult to see, but also provided cover from Draconian sensors. As they approached, they could see the ship. Its sleek black hull was damaged with a large scorch mark where Kira's crystal weapon had struck. Only two Draconians were visible outside the craft, the third presumably inside making repairs. Kira explained that with their ship damaged, the scouts would be conserving power, including their communication systems. They likely hadn't yet reported to their fleet. Maya had brought her modified quantum disruptor. It would affect the Draconians again, but not as strongly. They would adapt quickly. Susan carried a hunting rifle from her family cabin. She had never fired it at anything living, but was prepared to defend her friends if necessary. Kira detailed the plan. Maya would activate the disruptor, creating confusion. Then Kira would approach, using her knowledge of Draconian technology to access the ship. Susan would provide covering fire if needed, but they hoped to avoid direct confrontation. The plan went into motion. Maya activated the disruptor. The two Draconians outside the ship immediately reacted, clutching their heads in pain. Kira sprinted forward, moving with surprising speed and agility. Despite her recent injuries, she reached the ship access panel and began working on the controls. Susan watched nervously from behind a boulder, rifle ready. One of the Draconians spotted Kira and raised his weapon. Susan fired without hesitation. The shot missed but distracted the alien long enough for Kira to complete her work. The ship door slid open. The third Draconian emerged from inside. The ship roaring with anger, Maya increased the disruptor power, causing all three aliens to fall to their knees. Kira shouted for her friends to run to the ship. Now, while they are disabled, Susan and Maya sprinted across the open ground, reaching the ship entrance. The interior was alien and forbidding with organic-looking controls and a strong reptilian smell. Kira moved directly to the command console. Her hands flew over the controls as she attempted to lock out the draconian operators. Outside, the aliens were recovering from the disruptor effect. They moved toward the ship, weapons raised. Susan fired again, this time hitting one of the draconians in the shoulder. The alien fell back, but the others kept coming. "Close the door," Kira shouted. Still working on the controls, Maya found what looked like an emergency panel and activated it. The door began to slide shut, just as the lead draconian reached it. The alien thrust his arm through the narrowing gap, trying to force his way inside. Susan slammed the rifle butt down on the draconian arm. The alien roared in pain but did not release his grip. Maya grabbed a piece of loose equipment and joined Susan. Both women struck at the intruding limb until finally, the draconian pulled back. The door sealed with a hiss of air. Kira worked frantically at the controls. The ship systems responded to her commands, but sluggishly. The draconians outside were firing at the hull, each blast shaking the vessel. "Engine power building," the princess announced. "We need to launch before they breach the hull." The ship lurched as Kira activated the engines. Susan and Maya grabbed onto nearby fixtures to steady themselves. Through a viewing screen, they could see the draconians continuing their assault on the hull. Warning indicators flashed across the control panel. "Shield failure imminent." Kira said, her voice tense. "One more direct hit and they break through." She diverted all remaining power to the engines, ignoring safety protocols. The ship shuddered violently, then rose from the canyon floor. The sudden movement threw the humans against the walls. They gained altitude quickly, leaving the draconians behind. The ship controls were responsive now, as Kira navigated away from Earth. Susan looked out, a viewport watching her homeworld grow smaller. Her life had changed forever in less than a week. "Damage report," Kira said. Examining the displays, the hull integrity was compromised, engines operating at reduced capacity but sufficient for space travel. Life support stable. She looked at her human friends with concern. "You should not have come. This journey may be one way." Susan had already considered this possibility. When she helped Kira escape the draconian scouts, she knew she might never return to Earth. The human student had made her choice. Adventure called to her as it always had. Maya, however, looked troubled. "I need to go back," she said quietly. "My family, my life. I can't just disappear." Susan understood. She hugged her friend, promising to return one day if possible. Kira confirmed they could drop Maya at a safe location before leaving Earth atmosphere. The ship descended briefly, landing in a remote forest near the university. Maya hugged Susan tightly, tears in her eyes. "Promise you will come back one day," she whispered. Susan nodded, unable to speak. The friends had shared an extraordinary adventure, but now their paths diverged. Maya stepped off the ship with the modified communicator. Kira had taught her how to use it to monitor for draconian activity. If Earth faced danger, she could send a warning. The human engineer would be the planet's first defender, its only person with knowledge of the wider galaxy. As the ship rose again, Susan watched her friend become a tiny figure, then disappear altogether. The vessel accelerated, climbing through clouds until the blue sky darkened to the black of space. Earth became a beautiful sphere below them, a sight few humans had witnessed. Kira set course for the coordinates received from the Lyrian outpost. The stolen draconian ship would take them there in what the princess called reduced time, a concept Susan struggled to understand. It seemed similar to the science fiction idea of hyperspace. Before they could activate the faster-than-light drive they needed to clear the solar system, Kira explained, the energy signature would be detectable and might draw attention. They passed Mars, its red surface glowing in the darkness. Then the gas giants with their magnificent rings and moons. Susan marveled at the view, asking questions about each planet, comparing what she had learned in astronomy classes with what Kira knew. Kira was impressed by how much humans had discovered with their limited technology. She shared Lyrian knowledge, filling gaps in Susan's understanding as they prepared to leave the solar system. Alarms suddenly blared. A large vessel had appeared behind them. "Draconians," Kira said grimly. "The scout must have managed to send a distress signal before we captured it." She increased power to engines, but the damaged ship moved sluggishly. The pursuing vessel fired warning shots. The energy blasts passed close to their hull, rattling the smaller craft. "Surrender, Princess," a voice commanded over the communication system. "You cannot escape." Kira looked at Susan with determination. "I will not surrender," she said. "But you could. I could return you to Earth. The Draconians might spare you." Susan shook her head. "No. We face this together." The princess nodded, grateful for the humans' courage. She examined the ship systems, searching for options. The Draconian scout ship had one advantage. Its small size made it more maneuverable than the pursuing cruiser. Kira plotted a course toward Jupiter, using the massive planet's gravity to slingshot them forward. The maneuver worked briefly, increasing their speed and giving them distance from the pursuers. But the cruiser adjusted course, maintaining the chase. They would not escape by conventional means. Kira realized they needed to activate the reduced time drive early, despite the risks as. Kira prepared the drive. Susan monitored the pursuing ship. It was gaining, closing the gap. The Draconians fired again, this time striking their rear shields. The impact threw both women forward against the control panels. Warning lights flashed across the screens. Shield failure in 30 seconds. Kira announced drive charging, but needs more time. Susan looked around the alien ship, searching for anything that might help. Her eyes fell on the weapons console, similar to the ones the Draconians had used when attacking them on Earth. "Can I fire back?" she asked. Kira nodded quickly, showing Susan the targeting system. The human focused on the screen, tracking the approaching vessel. When the targeting indicator locked, she pressed the firing control. Energy beams shot from their ship, striking the Draconian cruiser. The hit was not significant enough to damage the larger vessel, but it surprised the pursuers. Their attack paused momentarily, giving Kira precious seconds to complete the drive preparation. Susan fired again and again, keeping the Draconians' defensive drive ready. Kira announced, initiating in 5-4. The princess counted down as Susan fired one final shot. The ship shuddered as space itself seemed to bend around them. Stars stretched into lines of light. The Draconian cruiser disappeared as they entered reduced time. The journey to the Lyrian outpost took what felt like hours to Susan, though Kira explained that in normal space, nearly a week had passed. The human experienced strange dreams during the journey, visions of distant worlds and civilizations she could barely comprehend. When they emerged from reduced time, a small star system appeared before them. A red dwarf star orbited by 3 planets. The Lyrian outpost was located on the second planet, a world with twin moons and a breathable atmosphere. Kira approached cautiously, using coded signals to identify themselves. Several ships rose to meet them as they entered the planet's atmosphere. Susan gasped at their beauty. Unlike the stolen Draconian vessel, these ships gleamed with pearlescent light. Their design was organic and flowing like water frozen in motion. Lyrian vessels, they landed at a hidden base built into a mountain range. The facility was larger than Susan expected, housing several hundred Lyrian survivors. Kira was welcomed with joy and reverence. The princess had survived, bringing hope to her people. She introduced Susan, explaining how the human had saved her life. The Lyrians were fascinated by Susan, the first human most had ever encountered. They treated her with respect and gratitude. Leaders of the outpost gathered to hear their story and discuss plans for the future. Kira spoke of Earth of humans and their potential as allies. Susan learned that the Lyrians had formed a coalition with other species threatened by Draconian expansion. Representatives from these allies were present at the outpost. Their appearance varied wildly. Some humanoid, others completely alien to Susan's eyes. Yet all shared a common cause: resistance against tyranny. In the days that followed, Susan adapted to life among the stars. She learned about Lyrian culture, history, and technology. She began training to serve as an envoy between Earth and the Coalition. Her unique perspective as a human proved valuable in strategic planning. Kira, now recognized as Queen of the surviving Lyrians, worked closely with Susan. The princess and the student developed a deep friendship based on mutual respect and shared experiences. Together, they crafted a plan to one day return to Earth to formally introduce humans to the galactic community. The coalition grew stronger as more species joined. Word spread of a human who had helped save the Lyrian royal bloodline. The story became legend among the stars, a symbol of hope that even the smallest actions by the most unexpected individuals could change the course of history. 6 months after leaving Earth, Susan stood beside Kira on an observation deck watching distant stars. The human had changed her, appearance now bearing subtle Lyrian markings of honor on her skin. Her eyes had been enhanced to see the spectrum of light visible to Lyrians, giving her a deeper appreciation of the universe. "Tomorrow we begin our counteroffensive," Kira said. The first direct action against Draconian forces reports indicated that the enemy had continued their expansion, unaware of the growing resistance. Susan nodded, feeling both excitement and trepidation. The coming conflict would test them all. "Do you regret leaving Earth?" Kira asked, noticing her friend's thoughtful expression. Susan considered the question, remembering her former life, her studies, her family. But then she looked at the stars spread before her, at the incredible journey she had undertaken. "No," she replied. "I was always meant for something more. I just never imagined it would be this." She smiled at Kira. "I will return to Earth one day, but first we have a galaxy to save." The alert system chimed, signaling the approach of Allied ships. More forces, joining their cause. Susan and Kira turned from the viewport, moving toward the command center. The human and the alien princess walked side by side, leaders in the resistance against tyranny. Their unlikely friendship had blossomed into a partnership that would reshape the power balance of the galaxy behind them. Stars glittered in the void, some perhaps visible from Earth, where Maya watched the night sky waiting for the return of her friend. The human engineer had kept her promise, safeguarding the knowledge that humans were not alone in the universe. One day the truth would be revealed, but until then, the legend of the human who helped save an alien civilization remained a secret known only to those who looked beyond their world to the stars.